As young people, as students, your lives have been greatly affected by the loss of these champions of freedom, of justice, of human dignity and peace. In a power-drunk world where means become ends and violence becomes a favorite pastime, we are swiftly moving toward self-annihilation. Your generation must speak out with righteous indignation against the forces which are seeking to destroy us. The student today is not the carefree, frivolous young person of yesterday's college novels. And decisively, he is not the acquisitive careerist we bemoaned as members of the silent and apathetic generation. Today's student is a serious-minded, independent-thinking individual who seeks to analyze and understand the problems of society and find solutions to these problems which are in keeping with the highest traditions and values of our democratic system. His response to the challenge of the crucial period in the history of our nation and the world is indeed a sobering influence on all of us. What we have seen in the way of student protests is in large measure a reaction to a status quo establishment-centered institutions of which students feel have allowed them little or no voice in policy-making decisions. This conflict between students and administration has often been improperly interpreted by the media, giving the impression that only a few leftist militants are making trouble. This is tantamount to skirting the real issues involved. Today's student is now recognized as a significant political actor with amazing power to influence the course of societies all over the world. In many ways, American students have now, with all their innocence and open generosity, become the prodding conscience to those in power and those aspiring to it. In the United States, candidates for the highest office in the land worry as much about their student support as formerly they concerned themselves with the farm bloc, organized trade union support, or the backing of businessmen. Indeed, the enthusiasm of students in a political cause is a vestment of its legitimacy and honesty. The political scene in our country has never been so marked by student action, and it is not reckless to predict that this is no apparent phenomenon, but a fundamental shift in social patterns that will distinguish this era from others past. Along with classes and races and conventional pressure groups, generations are now useful and appropriate categories of historical action and understanding. It is a totally novel development and a paradoxical one that students, most of whom have no vote, emerge as a formidable political force for progressive change. If student action has been dramatic in the United States, its impact has been thunderous in Europe. In France, it was the spark that ignited a political conflagration engulfing the whole society and forcing it to confront long-delayed issues of economic justice and real political freedom. There, too, a government pursued foreign and military policies on the backs of its citizens. In Czechoslovakia, the young have stimulated far-reaching developments that will, in the end, have irrecoverably altered the face of Eastern Europe, another moment in the long struggle to liberate it from dogma. How can we explain the depth and the scope of the student movements and the social upheavals they evoke. I think it must be seen that in the swiftly evolving technological societies of today, students, faculty, and all intellectuals are playing a new role. They are not only contributors, as in the past, of ideas and new concepts to the masses, no longer merely rationalizers of the status quo, but in the nature of modern industrial society, they have become a mass force themselves. They count. They are crucial. As an additional irritant, the intellectual maturity of young people is incomparably greater in this generation than in the past. But they, like the bourgeoisie in the pre-revolutionary France, are excluded from any participation in decision-making. These are some of the conflicts in their lives, in all of our lives. In this period of social, political, economic, and religious transformation, not one of us can be spared the luxury of withdrawing from the arena of action. As members of the family of mankind, we have an inherent moral responsibility to become participants in the greatest creative venture in the history of our world, that of remaking, reshaping, yes, restructuring our whole world order. Each one of us is being called to help save our society and the world from destruction. Legitimate questions may be raised about students' tactics and forms of protest. However, it would be folly to overlook the prophetic essence in the demands they are voicing. Most especially, it is unseemly for us to think that the agitation in Prague is beneficial and the agitators at home should simply and quickly shape up. Some of the objectives of the newly organized young may be immature and even somewhat divorced from realities. But there is nothing childish about their focus on the horrors of war and barbarities of race prejudice and inequality that seam and scar our society. But the rational essence in their protest has aroused sympathetic chords in large elements of the population who also want an end to war, to inequality and the fragmentation of personality. This war and the cries of the hungry and the young who have made these their causes, however, will not let them rest, and that is good. There is reason to hope and to struggle if young people continue to hold high the banner of freedom. They have made mistakes and will make more, but the older generation has failed America dismally, and if it is discredited, it has earned its disrepute. It is time for both fresh ideas and new leadership to come forth, because without it, our society is on sinking sand. Historians of the future may record that the alliance of the civil rights movement with the student movement that began in the late 1950s and matured into broad political and social action in the 60s was the salvation of the nation. I am a religious person in the most unqualified sense of the word, but I will say emphatically that there is more moral vitality and honest searching for values of life animating the campuses today than there can be found in our churches. The world is in dire need of a spiritual awakening which will make those eternal values of love, justice, mercy, and peace meaningful in our time. Finally, in struggling to give meaning to your own lives, as students, you are preserving the best in our traditions and are breaking new ground in your restless search for truth. With this creative force to inspire all of us, we may yet not only survive, we may triumph.